Hey everybody, welcome back to Byte Club, the monthly indie game club podcast. I'm your host, Nevin.
And I'm your other host, Jesse.
And this month we are talking about Hempuli Oi's role-bending puzzle game, Baba Is You. As a reminder, we will be discussing spoilers later on in the podcast. This first half is going to be completely spoiler-free, and we will be sure to let you know when we're heading into spoiler territory. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of talking about a dog that bends the rules of existence,
It's a sheep, isn't it? I thought it was a sheep.
Is she a sheep?
I think it's a sheep.
I don't know.
Whatever.
Whatever. Before we get to the shit about talking about whether or not it's a dog or a sheep, I would like to go ahead and announce that there is an Indie Bytes Patreon. Indie Bytes Byte Club Patreon. The main reason for the Patreon page is to get Indie Bytes to a point where it's self-sustaining. There are a few rewards that you can get from pledging, like voting on the games that we cover in Byte Club, patron-only streams and game nights, a special mention on the Indie Bytes website, and some other pretty cool stuff, so go check it out. If you'd like to support the show by becoming a patron, then head on over to patreon.com/IndieBytesYT, and thank you for your support, however that happens. So let's talk about a game.
So yeah, let's talk about a video game. Baba Is You is a devilishly challenging puzzle game where the rules you have to follow are presented as physical objects in the game world. A very, very cool mechanic. By moving the rules around on the screen, a la, classic Sokoban block pushing game, something you might have played on your phone, you can change how Baba Is You works, repurpose things you find in the levels, and cause surprising interactions. And it is quite the fun game. I had a lot of fun with it this month. Nevin, did you enjoy it yourself?
I have had a lot of fun with what I've been able to play.
Right.
As some of our dear listeners may or may not know, I got married this month. So
I feel like that should have been an announcement at the start, probably.
It's not related to the podcast, though, so, whatever. Rewind! Announcement! I got married! Okay, here we are, back to the past
Back to reality.
future.
Oh, there goes gravity. All right.
Okay, I don't know the rest of the lyrics to that. Anyways, so I was busy getting married and finalizing, all the wedding prep stuff, so I pretty much only had, a week to actually play this game. I was trying to sneak in time where I could to play it, but there was not a lot. I've only got, 5.5 hours in Baba Is You, and I've beaten 4 of the areas. So I have not played the whole thing, but everything that I've had fun with, or everything that I have played, I've had a lot of fun with. Even just the bits that I've seen, and, you sent me a couple screenshots of, way later levels, it's ridiculous, how clever this game is. And I played this game at the beginning of the month, I played this game so much, and, so intently, that I actually dreamed about it.
Whoa.
A couple nights in a row, I remember, having dreams about solving Baba Is You puzzles. It's ridiculous.
Cool. So you're saying there's a sort of a Tetris effect going on for you then?
Kinda, yeah. The Baba effect.
Ooh, I like that. That. I'm a fan.
Yeah. It's where you get mad at something and wish you could change its is to something else.
Ooh, yeah, like money is unnecessary. That would be really cool. If that could be one.
That'd be great, but oops, capitalism.
Aha, capitalism is stop, unfortunately.
Damn.
Well, I alternatively played way more than 5 hours of Baba Is You. I put almost 48 hours into the game this month. And
that's so many hours.
It's a lot of hours. It's quite a few. It's more than 5. Although, to be fair, I wasn't getting married, so that helps with that.
It does help. Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Of course. And, I had a lot of fun with it. Like Nevin was saying, I was able to send him some screenshots, and the later levels, compared to the earlier levels, just over the top with some of the mechanics that are added, the puzzles that are on offer. I mean, from the start, you have a couple pretty simple mechanics in terms of the items you can move around to create sentences to have rules, but later on those sentences can be screen wide. They can be stupidly long. There can be a huge collection of them. There's new rules. There's not operators. There's just, I don't want to get too far into it. That's the only thing I'll say regarding later mechanics. But
no, you can't throw not into this. This game is here's what I think I love about this game so much is that it's essentially programming. Like this,
it is.
This game is it has its own programming language. I love stuff like that. Like Zachtronics games are super awesome. Shinzen Io is a fantastic example of an actual code-based programming game, and this gives me a lot of flashbacks to that. Except instead of having to put your rules into the world, you have to modify the rules that exist sometimes in, like, an operational order. Like, there will be times where you have to change one thing to another and then apply a rule to that new thing that lets you go and do another thing to touch whatever to win.
See, and what's so funny is that explanation you just gave, while apt, is like the most confusing thing if nobody's played the game.
If you haven't played this game, what I just said makes no sense. Like, it's just so it's so good.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mention Zachtronics games, because while I was able to draw a connection to that with things like Shenzhen, like you said, Shenzhen IO and TIS 1000 or 100 or something like that. All Infinite Factory, all the sorts of games where you're essentially creating processes, which is a really cool way of solving puzzles. I think it's one of the best ways to make a puzzle game is to draw from the inspiration of programming a thing that ultimately has multiple solutions, and Baba Is You, of course, has multiple solutions. So that's something I really appreciated from the game. I was also able to draw a connection from this to that game from the developers for World of Goo called Human Resource Machine. Really, really fantastic game.
I've heard really good things about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's less challenging than Baba Is You by a country mile, but it's a great game nonetheless. It does the same sort of thing where you're, creating rules and the output is the result and stuff like that. And all those sorts of games, I think, are pivotal to people that want to play games but maybe don't appreciate the higher level mechanics and want something that's a simple puzzle game but still has the depth to be really, really, like, infectious. And like you said, like, you were falling asleep to it. You were dreaming about it, rather. And you were just, like, so stuck in it.
Yeah, it's all of that 100% is extremely accurate. I think also I get really, like, stuck on the programming side of things for stuff like this, because there's logic puzzles, right? Where it's like, I need to figure out how to get key into lock to open door.
Yeah.
Or even like Zelda tier puzzles where it's like, I need to push these blocks in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And then there's programming puzzles, which, as you said, you sort of build a process top down to solve a puzzle. And I just love when games do that, because it can serve as an introduction to programming for somebody. Like, sure. I don't think that Baba Is You is gonna make people go out and learn JavaScript or suddenly know how to work in SQL databases, but it serves as a gateway into that sort of logical thinking.
Definitely.
And that is something that I think is super important. And I've talked about it before with other things. I don't think on the pod, but I've talked about it before for sure. And it's just really important to create things that introduce people into that style of logical thinking, because it's definitely different. Instead of, like, a typical puzzle is a flat plane, and you have to solve things along that flat plane. But with any puzzle that has, like, a semblance of logic workings or programming workings to it, that plane becomes fluid, and you can sort of bend it however you want. It's fucking rad.
Definitely, yeah, I agree.
I can't get over it.
It's so cool that in some regards you can look at Baba Is You as this, as you said, like, as a way for people to learn programming or to at least understand it from a higher level perspective. Because the inspiration for the game, actually, because it was originally a Game Jam game for the Nordic Game Jam in 2017.
Yes.
And the inspiration for that actually came from the developer Hempuli or RV Takari, this is his real name. They were playing a bunch of puzzle games before they went to the event, and the topic for that Game Jam was not there, and it got him thinking about the not logical operator. And that was kind of the inspiration for the game. was to base it around logical operators. And originally you weren't even playing as a sheep or a dog or whatever Baba is supposed to be. You were playing as a robot, which makes a lot more sense from that sort of programming perspective of it. I think that's really cool.
Yes.
And another sort of connection that I made to that programming part of it, because I was a programmer for a really long time. I did a lot of it in high school. I went to college or university for it for a little while. Something I was really, really passionate about for a long time. And playing this game really got me thinking back to how I would approach programming. Because when I'm playing Baba Is You, I find myself solving one problem at a time, and along the way sort of hitting these walls of, I can't move forward with what I'm doing. So there's a rule that's set up that says like, Baba Is You, and there's another rule that says, key is open, door is shut. It should be a pretty straightforward process. Get the key to the door. It opens it.
Right. Yeah.
But after that, you get to that point and you find out like, doors stop or something, or not doors stop, but like there's something in the way of the door, like grass, and then grass is stop. And like, I go through the process of solving the first problem. And then there's another thing on top of that I wasn't expecting, that I didn't see. And then I have to solve that problem on its own in order to complete solving the first one. And that is such a cool thing that's brought out in Baba Is You, something that I felt was so intrinsic to programming, so intrinsic to just like writing code and trying to solve problems within different languages, that I found myself like surprised that he was able to get that across within a block pushing game where you control the rules. Like such a great way of getting that across to the player, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you had something similar, because have you done a lot of programming in the past and felt that?
Yeah, no, I used to do a lot of work in like SQL databases, and I've dabbled in like Game Maker and JavaScript and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I definitely felt that, because it's additive almost.
Yeah,
in the way, because when you program, one of the key rules of like beginning programming is like work additively. You make one facet of the thing that you need and you build up from there. You don't want to try and solve the whole function at once, or make all of your features at once, because then you're going to have a whole bunch of just bullshit going on in there. It's additive, and you build up your solution as you go. And another thing that sort of got me to tie this relation in with programming is that there was like a couple days when the Baba Is You Twitter was retweeting stuff that people were making in the game, or like fan art and stuff like that. And one of the things that I was actually able to find it again is somebody on Twitter called Moxmo made like a fishing line. And so they move Baba to set some rules, and it's this automated line that reels in a crab from the water and then pushes it back out again. And it's all automatic, and it just does its thing. So that's one thing that's just like, you can make shit in this game. You can create stuff. And then another thing is somebody created as fan art like a programming renderer. So they like type their code up, and it's in the Baba Is You style. All the rules that they create are like X is Y and Z. And it creates functional programs. It's fucking wild. It's all programming. This entire game is programming in a really cute way.
Yeah, no, it's wicked. There's so much about it that I find is it's so intrinsic, like I said, to programming, that I'm just so shocked that it came out so well in this kind of game. And the fact that it's I forget there's like a specific term for it, but it's capable of presenting real logical programming like systems within the actual game itself. Like you see people recreating, games in Minecraft using redstone or making calculators and stuff like that. This game is capable of doing something like that because of the systems it has set up. Like that stuff is wild. I love when games are capable of doing that, of allowing people who are good at programming, who are good at creating logical systems, to actually represent those systems within the games themselves and not have to do anything extra outside of them. That is so cool. And it really builds on this sort of systems driven puzzle solving that I think is pivotal to making a great puzzle game nowadays. Cause you can make very straightforward puzzle games, but they don't have the staying power, they don't have the longevity, and they don't have the simplicity of creating new levels like something like Baba Is You has, which is something I appreciate a lot. And I think a lot of people who are big into puzzle games find a lot of enjoyment out of, which is why I think this game has been so successful lately. It's an award-winning game. He won awards at IGF, GDC even. this is a big deal for such a small indie developer sort of thing. You know, the last successful game that Hempuli worked on was Environment Space Alpha. You know, like a 2D Metroidvania. So to switch over to a pure puzzle game and have so much success, I think speaks to how well this idea translated over to just a straight up game, just taking something as simple as logical operators and a block pushing game essentially, and how that worked so well. I think it did a really, really great job.
I think something else that sort of lends into the success of this game is, I mean, so one, it's not just a handful of operators and objects. There's a lot going on in this game. Just based off of what I've seen and what you've shown me, there is a vast amount of shit going on in this game. So
Absolutely.
it's not something as simple as, oh, I have these 3 or 4 functions, I'm going to use them for 5 hours and be done. There's probably at least 20 just individual functions and objects. And that leads to a ridiculous number of setups. But in addition to that, and sort of apart from the gameplay aspect, is the aesthetic and the presentation of this game. It's adorable as hell. I haven't seen a cuter game in a while. And it's simple. Its visuals are appealing without being distracting. The music is amazing, and really, the music can get you into the mood to think in the way that you have to think for this game, which I think is just a brilliant job. And just the simplicity of its overall design lends itself to an almost mimetic nature. You can just show somebody this game and they'll go, oh, that's really cool, I want to know more.
Yeah, like I showed it to my girlfriend, who isn't really big on puzzle games really at all, or games really at all. She, you know, sticks to the more popular genres and more popular franchises. But I showed her this game, and she was immediately really, really intrigued by it, because it's a simple process of just showing someone the game, and you can figure out how to play it just by looking at it, which is something that I don't think a lot of puzzle games can say, right? Like I said, like it is so appealing and does so well, both because it has the system set up for people who appreciate really, really deep puzzle games, but it's also so easy, like you said, to look at and just see, like, okay, Baba is you, and like you're moving around, like you understand, like, okay, this character is me, that is Baba, you know? There's a door, there's a key, there's a skull, like it's got, and this is something that I think it does really well, as well. Like it has those straightforward rules that you can see and understand, but it also plays with a level of subversion towards your understanding of those things from a game player perspective. Like you see a key, you see a door, they go together. But the rules that are set up in the game, you know, you'll see levels where you see a key, a door, and Baba is you, and then like other rules get in the way of that sort of thing, and that is really, really interesting. Like, you know, you see water, you know, you probably fall in the water, or you die in the water, or you can swim in the water, or something like that. But like, no, like it, you know, you never know what it's going to do. The rules define what those elements do, so you can't rely on your understanding of games that you have just like from playing them, and that you've had built into you over the last 10, 20 years of playing them. You kind of have to ignore those things and accept what the rules are telling you, which I think is so cool.
You have to... I think spinning off of that, the way that the levels are actually physically laid out is also something that plays on and against how you act when you hop into a game. Because a good example, like you just said, you see a door, you see a key, and your brain jumps immediately to push key to door, open door, get out, win. Like for me, multiple times I would be presented with a situation like that, and I would just like run up and touch the key, and I would die because somewhere in a corner of the screen, in a corner of the level where I couldn't get to, was the rule key is defeat. And it teaches you to kind of pay attention, to make sure you read everything that you can see in this level before you act, which I think just is a whole other really cool realm of behavior to try and teach somebody in a game. And then, as you said, where like things won't always behave as you expect, there are multiple levels with water that kills you, but it does it in different ways, and you can interact with that water and the rules to beat it in different ways. Like some levels, water is hot and Baba is melt. Okay, move melt away from Baba or make something else melt, you know? In other levels, it's water is sink. So if you touch the water, you're gonna sink. But also, that square of water disappears, so what can you do with this? And then add on to that words can sometimes push objects within levels, but not, like, interact with them. I cannot get over the breadth and depth of the possibilities in this game and how much you have to think about every level when you hop into it. And it's definitely a difficult game. Like, I can't express that enough. This game is super fucking challenging. But don't let that put you off from it if you haven't played this yet. Because it's so clever and creative and worth experiencing.
Definitely. No, I agree for sure. Like, it is, without a doubt, one of the hardest puzzle games I've ever played. It's one of the hardest programming style puzzle games that I've ever played. Like, I've played all the Zachtronics games. I've played, Human Resource Machine. I've played all those sorts of games. Mm-hmm. This one takes the cake, without a doubt. At points, you will become so frustrated you won't even want to bother playing it anymore, honestly. And this is something I wanted to touch on as well. While we've been really positive about Baba Is You, I think that it's hard to recommend it almost to people that aren't willing to put the time in to actually learn how to play it properly, learn how to play it in a way that is enjoyable, and then suffer through the really hard parts. Because I feel like, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's hard to sit down and want to play something that takes sometimes an hour to solve one part of, Like, if you're the kind of person that plays games because you like to finish things, obviously puzzle games might not be the thing for you to lean towards, but this one in particular could take a very long time to solve seemingly very simple things. And it really just comes down to the fact that every level has something new to teach you, which is great. But at a point, you are learning something new far too often, to the point that it doesn't feel like you're progressing. It feels like you're always starting at square one, which is great if that's the kind of puzzle game that you want. And I think the game works really well on the Nintendo Switch because of that, because you can bring it with you. And if the curiosity strikes, the creativity strikes, if suddenly you realize like, oh, that's how you solve that, take your Switch out your bag, take it out your whatever, and start playing it and just solve the puzzle and move on with your life. But if that's not the kind of person you are, if that's not how you can play games, I think that you're going to find yourself frustrated, and you're going to find yourself feeling like you could be doing anything else with the hour it takes you to solve one thing.
Exactly. And like, I wonder if we're in kind of a unique situation with this because we've been trying to beat it within a month in your case and a week and a half-ish in mine. Like, it definitely puts a lot more pressure on it, and it's definitely... A lot of my frustration with the game came from knowing I have to play this, starting it up, and just staring at a level for 30 minutes before I can even really think to try anything. And it put me in an interesting position because, one, I had such a small amount of time, but two, because I do still enjoy that kind of thinking. Like, when I'm presented with a problem, I love working on it until I can solve it. But, I mean, typically, when I'm in that kind of situation, I can at least try things and push buttons to scratch an itch, And in this game, that's not really the case because there's so many buttons to push at any one time that you can't always tell if they're doing anything. And that can be pretty frustrating for a game like this. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying, for sure. Like, it's not something that, like, you can sit down and interact with quickly and sort of move on. Because I agree with you with being that kind of person. You have to observe it, and you have to, like, look at everything and take it all in, and then start to run through things in your head. You can't just start doing things in it. Mm-hmm. And in a way, that's also extremely similar to programming. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Arvi, when he was doing a talk at one of the some event in, I think, Sweden or Norway, he was talking about how he appreciates the prototyping process of game development and how game jams really allow people to sort of come to solutions and learn new things very quickly, which I think is great. Like, if you can prototype, you can do things faster. And that's something that I think is reflected in Baba Is You as well. Like, this is very much a programmer's game. If a programmer was going to make a puzzle game, this is what you would get out of it. Not like Zachtronics games are very pretty, and TIS 100 especially is very much just an assembly kind of game. Like, you're almost writing in exactly assembly language. It is, that is the closest you're going to get to straight up coding, but this one feels like it represents that feeling of programming in a way that is closer to playing an actual game, which I think is really, really, really impressive.
Yes, this is a out of all the programming like puzzle games, this is probably the one that does the best job.
Yeah.
Of making programming actually gamified.
For sure.
And I think it might have mostly to do with the fact that you push the blocks around, and that the physical layout of the levels has so much influence on what you can and cannot do with the programming operators that you have. Whereas in like Shinzen Io, you take an object and you have a literal coding window that you like type in your code to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That Shinzen Io is like having a job. This is like playing a
Definitely.
game.
That's a great way of selling this game. Like, for sure. If you couldn't get into Shenzhen because you were like, man, I feel like I'm doing chores for somebody or writing boilerplate, this is the game for you, because it's boilerplate, but if it was fun, like, it's great.
Oh, geez. Wouldn't it be great if programming
Yeah.
were fun?
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. To go back to the point you were discussing a little earlier about how the game how our playing it hurt our ability to, I think, enjoy it as much as somebody who would play it more lackadaisically. Is that a word? That's a word.
Yes, I actually had one more thing that I wanted to say on that. Is like I wish I could have taken my time over like 2 or 3 months.
Definitely. Yeah. This is very much a subway ride kind of game. You know, it has the same sort of presentation of its levels and areas and stuff as, you know, your Candy Crush sagas or your Cut the Ropes. Like, if this was a mobile game, I think it would work perfectly.
Which is why I think it's so good on the Switch.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was saying earlier, like, when the opportunity strikes,
yeah.
you sit down and you know, for 5 seconds, you just, does this work? No, it doesn't. Put it away. Or does this work? Yes. Awesome. Move on. Where with the way that we had to play it for the podcast, it kind of hurt our ability to have that experience. I played it a lot over a couple of weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, so about exactly a month. Wow. I played it for like an hour or 2 every day, and then closer to the podcast, I started just firing through it. And I found more and more that the longer sessions weren't less enjoyable than the shorter ones for me, but I found more and more that, like, as the game progressed, just because of how difficult it became, I stopped feeling that degree of enjoyment, that degree of satisfaction from solving a problem the same way that I did earlier. Because it wasn't like, oh, I've spent 20 minutes, I figured it out. It was more, I've spent an hour and I'm most of the way through figuring it out, but there's like bits and pieces that I don't understand yet. There's bits and pieces that I haven't considered. And a lot of the later puzzles stop persisting on your ability to actually figure out how the rules work. And it starts being how precisely you can position different words or different blocks or different elements in order to move yourself forward. So it stops being so much how well do you understand the rules, and it starts to become how well do you understand the movement mechanics, which isn't a bad thing, but that's not what I was here for. And it doesn't have that degree of satisfaction of understanding something as much as it does your spatial awareness of the actual game itself. So that was part of my frustration closer to the end, and why I think that the later levels for a lot of people can be demoralizing and not particularly motivating. But the first, I'd say 3 or 4 levels, about the point where you are, Nevin, that's where the game hits its stride. That's where it feels really fun to play, and that's where it kind of reaches its precipice. So you could tell, like, if you're having fun, but you think like you've had enough fun, go finish the game. If you feel like you could go for some more, there's definitely more. There is so much more.
I fully intend to finish this game, but it is definitely going to be a back pocket. Oh, what do I want to play right now?
Like, I have 30 minutes before I got to go to a meeting, or, you know, I got to go do laundry and I got to wait for something to dry, or I'm baking something or cooking something. Like, this is the game to play when you only have 30 or 40 minutes and you just want to try something out. You don't want to play something that's story investing. You don't want to play something that's taxing gameplay wise. You just want something simple and straightforward. I think if they port this to mobile, it'll be great.
So I think we're pretty good for pre-spoiler discussion, and we're also at about the halfway point. We had a couple of questions that I think fit into the spoiler-free area, so I want to go ahead and touch on those real quick before we move on.
Sure, let's hear them. Let's hear it.
We got one from our buddy Cody, a.k.a. Puking Goombas, and I really like this question. Do you think a more creative mind or a more logical mind is better suited for this game?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think that as we've discussed, like, this is very much a programming centric game. Like, it is, you do the programming, but a lot of people assume that programming is purely logical, but there is a lot of creativity that goes into programming. And I think the answer to this question is that it depends on the level. Because there are some levels that even I've seen where, like, there are a lot of solutions. And I think with those, a more creative sort of free-flowing approach will enjoy or be able to do more but on the stricter levels, I think that a more logical mind will do better.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, so there's a great sort of thing that I heard from one of my professors in university. A good programmer is logical. A great programmer is creative.
I like
and
that.
it's good that he worded it there in this tweet. And it really is the truth, I think, because like someone who is good at figuring out how to solve a problem just by looking at it and breaking it down will probably reach the same sort of conclusions in Baba Is You as anyone else that thinks the same way. A programmer will come at Baba Is You and think about it very strictly, very like move specific. Everyone has their own way of programming, obviously, but somebody who's just, into it a little bit, not like super creative about it. They just like writing code and working on things. They will, in my opinion, maybe not true, but what I found from my own way of playing at the start, they'll kind of come to these very straightforward, very strict conclusions. But the people who will have the most fun with this, I think, the people who will find themselves enjoying it the most are the ones who can get creative with the rules that the game offers. Because there are some people who will think like, how can I make the rock move? When in reality, the way you need to think, the way you need to approach things is, how do I make everything like other than the rock move? How do I make the water move? How do I make the walls move? That's the way you have to think to play this game the right way.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I take back my answer and supplant it with yours.
No, I mean, you still have a good answer that like later, especially later on, like you haven't gotten that far, so you don't know, but later on in the game, you need to think in a very logical way. You need to break down what are the rules, and you need to accept what those rules are, and then approach the level accordingly. Can't have fun with it in the same way that you would the earlier levels where there's more freedom to experiment, more freedom to try things out. You have to very strictly follow what the game is giving you and approach it thusly. There's less space for experimentation and less space for expression in your gameplay, which is for some people that might be disappointing, but for others, I think it's the thing that they're looking for. So you have just as good of an answer as I do, in my opinion.
All right. Next question is from @HeyItMeBen on Twitzer. Who is Baba?
So this is a good question. Really, we're all Baba when you think about it.
Yeah.
Baba's you, I think.
Baba
really?
is you. Baba is us.
Baba is
you and me.
I know it's my destiny. Pokemon. Yeah, so that's actually a funny question from like a philosophical angle. I know it's not supposed to be a legit question, but in the same sort of talk I was talking about earlier that Arvi was doing where he discusses his appreciation for prototyping, there's a degree of discussion in that, and you'll find a link to that, by the way, in the Extra Bytes article for this podcast. That'll be up probably when it goes up, or when this podcast goes up, rather, that he discusses his playtesting for the game and how a lot of people that were playing the Game Jam version at the Nordic Game Jam, they were finding themselves sort of referencing the movement of the character, how you can switch what the character is to transferring consciousness. Yeah, so there is a sort of philosophical angle, and that was the thing that was mentioned to him that really made him understand, like, maybe he has something to this, right? Maybe it's more than just a puzzle game. Maybe there's something to this, that it has some staying power, that it has something interesting to it. And that's really interesting that we all kind of make this joke of, like, who is Baba? Baba is you, it's an apt title, but it's also like, there are questions to it. And I think later on, as you play the game, as you find more of the word mechanics that come along with things, there is a sort of almost like religiosity to it, a sort of like discussion of the self, of who you are and what you are. It's weird. It's metatextual. You kind of have to read into things a little bit, but it is there. So as much as that's a joke question, who is Baba? Who do you want Baba to be?
Damn.
That's the answer.
That's really good. I like that. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Cody. So now we're going to move on over to the spoiler zone. But before we do, we're going to take a little break. And we will see you in Spoiler Town, USA. Population, us.
Population, me and Nevin. Nevin and me.
Population, Baba.
So, Nevin, what's a good name that I've heard before?
What's that?
David Snotter.
It's a pretty good name.
Actually.
I like that name.
It's a great name.
Good name.
If you want to hear more good names, especially if you want to hear your own name on this podcast, you can head over to patreon.com/IndieBytesYT, all one word. And you can drop a little donation, help out the show, and we will say your name, or, whatever you want your name to be on this podcast, so long as it's not profanity, please, or anything gross.
Yeah, make sure it's a powerful name.
Goku? We'll say that on podcast. You want me to say Goku? I'll say it again. Goku. That's 3 Gokus.
That's 3 Gokus. Give us money. now. So welcome back. Wow, we're in Spoiler Town.
Oh,
What?
it's still just me and Nevin. No one else is here.
It's a ghost
going
town.
on?
Welcome to.
Actually,
the
no.
tavern.
You know what?
What?
It's me and Nevin, and you.
You.
You're here with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a little lonely.
Yeah.
We might have to huddle for warmth. Our heater's out, but we'll survive.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. So spoilers for Baba Is You, huh? I got the wiki pulled up so I can pull up levels that you mention.
Nice. Well, I won't be mentioning them by name, so good luck.
Fuck! Baba is fuck.
There you go. That's my favorite word that they add later on. So spoilers.
Just a bunch of
Spoilers.
Babas show up.
That's actually funny. That's funny that you say that. So,
no.
so this spoiler section is going to be a lot of me mentioning things because Nevin, like you said at the top of the podcast, he has not been able to get as far as I'm sure he'd like to have gotten in the game. So I'm going to be mentioning some things, and we'll be talking about those aspects of them. I will say a little closer to the end, I'm going to mention something that even if you've beaten Baba Is You, you might not have done. So if you're looking to discover everything the game has to offer on your own, I recommend cutting things off at a point. I'll let you know when, but for the most part, you can listen to everything we've got going on, and you will have a good time with it.
You were teasing me about that earlier. I've got my Switch ready so I can see what the fuck you're talking about. I'm excited.
You can't get it from where you are.
No!
Yeah, so unfortunately you will not be able to do it until you get a good bit farther
Damn it!
into the game. But
Get that carrot off the stick. Let me
you'll
do it.
Gets you to play it more, I guess. So Baba Is You, as we were mentioning, does have a lot of words to it, a lot of descriptors that you can use to create rules, but later on you discover more of them. So at the start you have things like is, and I think you unlock and stuff like that.
I've got
that are all parts of the levels. So nice. So you have and stuff like that. But have you seen Telly yet?
Telly?
Telly. Tele. No?
Like teleport?
Like teleport.
I'm looking this up. Telly is short for
okay,
teleport.
so
Okay.
Yeah, Telly is short for teleport, yeah. Yeah, so
Whoa,
eventually,
that's cool!
Yeah. So you can turn objects into teleporters. So Rock's teleport is one that's pretty common. You can make anything telly, obviously, that's just how the game works. But yeah, so eventually you unlock teleporters, you unlock fall, and it's funny that you mentioned Baba, a bunch of Babas show up, you eventually unlock more. So with that descriptor or activator or whatever you want to call it, you can make whatever object it is. So say it's Baba is more, a bunch of Baba will spawn around you in the cardinal directions, the 4 cardinal directions. One will spawn above you, below you, to the left, and to the right. And then that keeps happening to each Baba on the screen every second that you wait or move or do anything, which is really, really cool. I really like the inclusion of that. But yeah, so as you go along, you unlock more things like that. And it's so cool. Like there's just so many different words that are included in the game that I think it's almost hard to describe the depth that comes from the inclusion of all these sorts of things. Like I said at the start, there's a not operator that you unlock that makes, the opposite of things happen. So say not Baba is you, everything becomes you other than Baba.
Oh, fuck.
Have you seen the text operator yet?
No. What?
Yeah, so there's 2 things.
Oh, no, I have seen text. I have seen text. It lets you,
okay,
so
you've
you
seen
move
text,
the text objects.
But I know from where you are, you haven't seen Word yet.
Word?
So
I'm glad I pulled up the fucking wiki.
Yeah. So you can do object is word, and the word turns whatever the object is. So when the object is moving around on the screen, it becomes the word itself. So say you have,
I have a
wall
rock,
is you
or,
is the rule.
Okay.
Or rock is you. Sure. We'll go with rock is you. Let's say rock is you is the rule, and you have a rock. You could put a rock, like the object rock, not the word rock. You can put the object rock in a rule description, and that will work the same as putting the word rock in that spot.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it really changes how the puzzles play out, which I think is just so, man, there's so many things. Like I could just keep on going, honestly, with how many interesting things there are in the game that you unlock later on. Like there's a lonely adjective that you unlock later on in the game.
I think I've seen lonely, but not in my game, like on Twitter.
Yeah, lonely makes it so that if your object leaves a certain space, or is on its own outside of a certain space, then you stop moving, like lonely blank is not you, is you, then as soon as you leave the space, you stop moving, which is really cool the first time that it happens. It's like a really almost narrative moment in what is essentially, a very mechanically focused puzzle game, which is really interesting. I think it's cool that, like, I was expecting something like that later on, but I wasn't expecting it in the way that the game delivers it, which is really interesting. There's so much like that I think it's just so smart. And a lot of the words that are included in the game are actually from necessity, or not most of them, but like, I think half of them were born out of necessity to make puzzles work better, to make them easier to understand. But the other half of them were just people suggesting things for puzzles. Because later on, and I don't want to get too far into it, but later on there are puzzles that aren't made by the developer that are in the game. And those ones have sort of specific things to them that are really cool. And you could see them sort of building it up, like you could see Hempuli sort of building that up outside of those levels. So they take what other people suggested and build new things with that, which is really, really interesting.
That is fucking rad. I think
there's so much like that.
I think the best way to describe this game is smart. It is an
yes.
Not if you play this you are smart, but this is a very smart game. It's so clever, it's so creative.
Yeah, definitely.
God, I love it.
Like it just delivers on so many things that I think people are looking for when they're playing a puzzle game. It doesn't limit itself to a very strict set of mechanics. It doesn't limit itself to strict set of mechanics, but it also doesn't like push things too far, which I think is good. Like I said a little earlier, it does have the problem of feeling like it's always reinventing itself with every level, and to a point that can feel discouraging because it doesn't feel like you're learning anything. But at the same time, it delivers so many new things, so many new mechanics so frequently that if you can push past that feeling of discouragement, you do find new things to learn. And that's really when the game is most satisfying, is when you're learning something new. When they give you a mechanic and you have the freedom to experiment, you have the freedom to learn how it works, before it gets to the point where it's really testing how well you understand those mechanics, how well you understand how those rules work and how those new words work and how those new words interact with other new words and stuff. It's such a smart way of delivering that content that keeps the player engaged without getting in the way of the player actually feeling like they can have fun with it, feeling like they're playing a new game without getting in the way of their understanding of how everything else works. So it's always building on top of itself. It's never knocking itself down. It's never putting things to the side to get be like, oh, look, we just blew your mind by changing how this works. Everything stays consistent, which is good because consistency allows you to come to your own conclusions, to come to an understanding of how the systems work. And when it gets really strict, when it gets really logically strict, you have an understanding of how everything works and you can go into it and you know that things are going to work the way they're supposed to work. They're not going to suddenly not work. The problem comes, though, when you unlock extra levels, and you've probably run into a couple of them. The extra levels where they expect you to figure out a mechanic that the game has not explicitly taught you, or at all, in my opinion. There's one, and I was talking to a friend of the show, Rasputin, about there's one level that he was playing where the mechanic in it is that you have to overlap text. So you're not like overlapping two objects, you're overlapping text.
I know that there's one where you have to make an object or gain control of an object, then push text onto it, and then use that object to push the text out of the way. That was one of the levels that really, I never would have thought to do that.
That's a very common mechanic later on. Like, that's something that you find pretty often. After that point, it's about as common as the text overlap one, I would say. But the first time you run into that, it's very, very surprising. It's not like something you would expect. It's not something that I think a lot of people would even think to do on their own.
That actually is something that I wanted to mention. Is that there, even for me, there are levels where there is a thing that you need to do, but because of how this game is presented and how kind of open everything is, the thing that you need to do is new, and you just don't think to do it.
Yeah.
A lot of the solutions that I've seen are I never would have thought to do this. Not once would I have thought to bypass a transmutation need by just wording things a little bit differently, or do the text separation trick that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
That I think is where a lot of frustration with this game really comes from for me, is that the solutions they can't hint towards the solutions like you would teach mechanics in another game,
Yeah.
It's very...
No, definitely.
Yeah, it's very much a good luck.
Yeah, hope you can figure it out, and if you can't, then
Go to Google.
try something else. Go do something else. Go, approach it with a different mindset later, or see if you can find a walkthrough on YouTube.
Yeah, dude.
Which, honestly, I did once or twice. I kind of had to. I was
Yeah.
getting to the point where I was like, I've tried everything. And then you look it up and you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. Or you look it up and you're like, oh, I never would have thought of that in a million years.
Or you look it up and you go, oh, I was partway there. I just positioned these words wrong.
Yeah. And those sorts of text puzzles, the one where you have to overlap the text, or the one where you have to put text on an object and like switch it to push, and that pushes the text off of it. Those sorts of puzzles, as much as they're fun to figure out, I think, for people that do end up figuring them out on their own, those are also things that are built on the intrinsic rules of the game that you can't see. As much as a lot of the rules of the game are defined within the game itself, I mean, it's not entirely true, right? There are elements of the game that you don't
Get to change.
understand, that you can't change, exactly, that are
such
intrinsic
as how
to it.
you interact with text.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Like your interaction with the text, the way that you move the blocks themselves, while it's very straightforward and very obvious, that text overlapping mechanic is something you never would have guessed you could do. Just because, like, the game has never presented you with a rule where you can change that element of it. It's always very strictly been, the text does not overlap, as much as it is an object, it is also a physical thing. And like the way that you do that text overlap, you're not actually overlapping the text, you're overlapping the text on an object and then switching the object to the text. But you wouldn't even think that you could do that. Like, you would think like it wouldn't be able to work. And yeah, the experimentation aspect of it does allow you to eventually figure that out. But like I said, the game presents you with challenges and teaches you things and then sort of pulls the rug out from under you, which is fine. But when it does that, it's telling you to essentially no longer trust your understanding of the mechanics of the game itself. And you have to always go into each level with a blank slate, that you're going to just accept whatever the game offers you and you're going to go along with that. And that is great, but it can be super frustrating, especially when you run into levels like that one where you have to teach yourself something new through playing the game. It becomes a real chore later on, even though I think it's really, really fun later on too. Because eventually, like, as much as you need to understand all the rules, like you were saying earlier, when you're playing it, you kind of... Okay, when you approach a level for the first time, what's the first thing that you do?
I look at the words on the level.
Right. And you sort of process what the rules are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go from there.
And then I go from there, yeah.
So you see each thing that's covered in a corner. So like they're in a
now
corner
I
and they're
do.
blocked off with a wall.
Now I do, yes.
Right, so you walk into a level, or you open a level rather, and you see all of the rules that are set. You see like wall is stop, Baba is you, and like those are things that are blocked off in a corner that you cannot move. Mm-hmm. And you have to accept those things. And you can sort of problem solve the game by looking at those rules and figuring out like, oh, I can move everything but
You like work backwards.
the wall. Yeah, exactly. So you go process of elimination. Like, what can I move? What can I change? Eventually, I think it's a little earlier you see it, but eventually you see more often, item is item. So
Baba is
wall
Baba.
is wall.
Wall is wall.
Baba is Baba, yeah. So
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can't-
change what those things
Exactly.
are. They are predefined as being those objects, which is fine. It works. I get it. But, when that stuff comes up, later on, way later on, there's a maze level that you go into that has something like 30 rules.
Oh.
That are all predefined. Yeah. And that one's not that hard. Like, that level's pretty straightforward. But the actual rules of the game, like, just parsing those and making sure that you understand the rules can take you sometimes 5 to 10 minutes, in my opinion. Like, 5 minutes just to, like, figure it out, sometimes if it's long ones. But then another 5 minutes to, like, go over what you can do and what you can't do and how things work and how things interact. And if they're introducing a new mechanic to you while having that many rules, which isn't common, but when that happens, oh boy, it is quite the mission to make sure that you're getting it all right.
What do you think about... So, like, we were talking about how this game is very, very much programming.
Yeah.
I feel like that's, like, oddly fitting, as frustrating as that can be. It's like you're opening up somebody else's code and trying to figure it out without comments. Like, that's...
Yeah, that is a great way of putting it.
That's
Absolutely. Like, how frustrating that can be for you.
It is an extremely, like, frustrating thing, but as we've sort of talked about, the creator has said that this is extremely inspired by programming, so, like, that experience and that feeling is kind of at place. It's kind of at home within Baba Is You.
Definitely, yeah, it's intentional.
I
It's
struggle
not something
to say,
that was, like, accidental.
I'm just trying to... Like, it's definitely intentional. I'm not trying to say it's not, but I'm trying to figure out in my head if that's a failing.
Well, I mean, there could be things that are intentional that aren't good about everything,
True.
right?
True.
Like, I think it was definitely on purpose to do that sort of thing, but not having, like, any means for the user to have those rules broken down in a way that's easier to comprehend. Like, yeah, you can hit start and see all the rules listed
But they're
out.
not ordered in any way.
Yeah,
It's just
there's
arbitrary.
no like, and another thing that kind of I wish was there was like an easier mode, where maybe you've changed a rule and you've discovered that that rule has broken the puzzle, right? Like you can no longer solve it. And I just wish that was there for people that wanted to play the game a little more. And I don't want to get into the difficulty discussion too deep, but this game, I think, could definitely benefit from having systems in place that allow people to understand when they have ruined a puzzle, like I was saying. Say you've turned a key into something else and you no longer can turn that key back into the original item because the new item is itself. You can't change that item. So say like key is whatever, you make key a rock, but rock is rock, so you can't make rock a key anymore. Mm-hmm. When stuff like that happens, you've broken the puzzle, but you wouldn't know that, right?
Until you
Maybe
get
you
to
just
the
keep
point,
going forward. Exactly. And then you have to rewind the whole game to get back to that point and redo everything you just did in the exact order that you did it. And if you forget, then screw you, I guess. Like, good luck figuring out what you were doing and getting back to that point. So, yeah, I mean, as much as I think that was on purpose, and as much as I think it's actually a good design decision to not have that, so that, like, you have to truly understand the rules of that level before you can solve it. It is also, I think, very frustrating for people that want to play further. And as you will find, as you keep playing, you'll be like, like, there's so many rules. Like, you get into a point and you're like, I forgot about that. Or there's a rule from a previous level that was, most of the levels, actually, the extra ones, are just a level you already played with, like, one thing changed or two things changed.
Yeah.
And you go into it and you're like, oh, this looks similar. I'll just do what I did already. And nope, you can't even approach it even remotely the same way.
Yep.
And that, again, like, so much of what I think is wrong with this game is stuff that's great. Stuff that, like, was implemented really well, stuff that is really fun to do, but then you actually, like, have to do it, and it sucks. And I can imagine there are so many people that fall off of this game because it's just presented in such a such a defeating way. Obtuse for sure, but, like, it's such a defeating way. Such a way that, like, makes you feel like no matter how much you understand about this game, you truly do not understand this game.
That's a big feeling that I've been getting on it, is like, okay, I've solved this puzzle, but I don't feel like I learned anything. I don't feel like I grew in my competence with this game. I just feel like, okay, I solved that. What's next, I guess? And I feel like we're taking a dump on this game right now, but it's good. It's really good.
No,
it's just very.
Like
it's a very specific kind of game that very specific people will love.
Definitely, it fills a niche really well.
Yes,
and like I said, like, a lot of the stuff that I think is wrong with this game is stuff that's really, really good. Like, it's not. None of what we've mentioned is particularly a problem, because everything we've mentioned is stuff that builds the game to be what it wants to be, to do exactly what it wants to do.
Yes.
But what it's doing ultimately, I feel, is something that doesn't appeal to enough people, or the kinds of people that I think the game could appeal to if there were just small changes, just little things,
okay,
just
I get
options
you.
there.
I get you.
Yeah. Like the Sekiro issue people were having. Like, more people could play it if there were difficulty options. They would be able to get into it more. And I don't want to dive too deep into that, like I said.
Let's not open that can of worms.
Absolutely not. But there is an element of that, I think, in a lot of games where people would like this if there was just one little opportunity for them to understand it a little better. If there was just some degree of understanding. And some people will get to the point where they play Baba Is You, they finish the first 4 or 5 levels, and they feel content, and they can move on, and they, like, you know, they keep playing for a little bit, they're like, oh, this is really challenging, they stop playing, and they don't feel like they didn't complete it. They don't feel like they didn't have fun with it. They feel like, you know, they got their money's worth, they walk away, and they're good. And that's great. But there are a lot of people that I think play puzzle games, and they expect the puzzle game to kind of be finishable, you know? They want to finish all the levels. They want to do everything there is to do because they like it. But at a point, you kind of, like, you enjoy it, but you're still, like, in that mindset of, like, oh my goodness, I have to sit down and play this for an hour to figure it out. Or, you know, I play it for 10-minute chunks every once in a while, and then this is your time waster game for a long time. You know, and if you move on and come back to it, you're going to forget things, or you're going to, you know, not be able to remember how certain puzzles can be solved, or what the intended way of moving the blocks is. You know, like, there are elements of moving the blocks that are shared throughout most of the levels. Like, you'll find one cool way of doing something, one way that makes sense, and then you can do that all the time, and it's really easy. But if you forget that stuff, you'll have to come back and relearn not just how the rules work, but also how that movement mechanic works, how you're supposed to do that in a way that makes it make sense, you know? It's just stuff like that. So it's hard to put it down when it's your time waster, but it's also the way you're supposed to play the game. I think that makes it the most enjoyable. Yeah, weird situation, but very, very good game nonetheless. And yeah, I think more people should finish it at the very least. And by finish it, I mean like finish all the levels, or at least try to unlock all the areas. Did you have anything you want to bring up before I hop over to the bit that I wanted to spoil?
No, honestly, like if I'm really upset that I didn't get to play more of this game. But that is the way that it is. I don't feel like I have a whole lot to contribute to this section, this episode. So we can just we can just move.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
You got married.
I'm married and shit, y'all. Damn.
You did more than I did this month. I just played a video game. That's not true. I did a lot this month. But whatever. You know what I mean.
This is my excuse. Okay, yeah, go ahead and do the
this
super
is
secret
the bit where I want to this is the super secret bit. So if you have beaten Baba Is You, or you think you have beaten Baba Is You, and you want to play more of it, or you wish there was more of it, there is more of it. I'm going to tell you what you need to do in order to get to that more of it, so I can talk about the bits that you unlock later on. But if you want to learn those things on your own, I suggest leaving, going and doing it, maybe coming back. It's not too hard to do yourself. You just got to spend some time on the overworld map. That is all I will say. So, the secret, special, extra special levels in Baba Is You. To unlock them, you unlock the top 3 levels. So you know how the first 6 or 7 levels are all numbered on the overworld map?
Yeah.
So, man, this is so cool. So, they're all numbered, but eventually you unlock 3 more levels, 8, 9, and 10. Level 8 has a new object in it called level. So it's not like rock. It looks like jump, or not jump. It looks like fall, or like move, or push, right? The text is clear on the inside. So it's not an object. It's like a descriptor. It's really weird. But you can make level is Baba in level 8, and in level 10, you can make level is flag, I believe is how it goes. You leave those levels, and on the overworld map...
Do you leave them before finishing them?
No, as soon as you make level is something, you get kicked out of the level.
Okay.
When you do that, you can control Baba on the overworld map, and then there's a flag where the level used to be for level 10. You walk on that flag, and then it takes you to a secret level, a secret set of levels. And inside of there...
That's so cool.
Is an extra, 40 levels.
That's so cool!
Yeah. And it is insane. It is so cool. The thing that I like the most about it is that, first off, there's more levels, and they're all actually really good levels, and it introduced new mechanics, which is awesome. But there's also another level inside of that level, and you're not even ready for this, by the way, Nevin. There's another level inside of that level called ABC, and inside of there you unlock a bunch of levels that are all about manipulating letters of things. So instead of as soon as you get into that area, by the way, before you get into ABC, the first puzzle that you do is welcome at the top, and then it sort of looks like the first puzzle that you do. Pretty straightforward to solve it. It's not hard. The second one is welcome at the top, and individual letters that take up the space of a single object word. And you have to spell love and then use that as part of the puzzle. So it teaches you that you can use individual letters to spell out objects or objectives or something like that, and use that to make a rule. So love, Love, is you. You have to do it that way. It is bonkers. But that's not even the craziest part. So after you've beaten those levels, you can unlock another level that you can do level is something. I think its level is push. And you can push a block into these this dust that's blocking your path to another secret level called the depths. Inside of the depths, which doesn't have more levels, but inside of the depths, it is a level that has levels inside of it.
What?
Yeah. So as you're moving through the level, you can unlock, just like from doing different solutions and moving things around the right way, you can unlock a new level. It is insane.
This is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, it goes down 4 levels deep, and there are 3 orbs you can collect in the game that I think you can only find in the depths, and that unlocks something else, and I have not figured out what it is. I do not know, but there is more to the game.
Oh my god.
It is insane. It is crazy how deep things go in this game.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool.
It is very cool. I think it's it speaks to how meta the mechanics can get in the game. Just how how insanely deep things can be. It is so cool. I love it.
Yeah, that's really, really freaking rad. That is super cool.
Mm-hmm. Love that stuff.
Damn. God, that's cool. That's so cool. This game kicks ass. This game's so cool.
It is.
Fuck.
It
It's
is.
cool.
It is.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Damn. All right. Well, I think that's it for us. I think it's time to...
Oh, don't we have a question, I thought?
Oh, shit. Yeah. Sorry. I forgot our boy. So this question is from Raz, at the Razbutin on Twitter. Which level made you feel the smartest for solving and why?
Nevin, you want to go first?
I can't remember the name of this level, but it's one where text is floating, and there are a couple of rocks that you have to push, and the flag is on the other side of a 2x8 river. And the rules are Baba is you, text is float, rock is push, flag is win, water is sink, and hedge is stopped. And you're like surrounded by hedges, and you kind of have to make yourself the rock, or put the rocks in a line, and make them sink the water to sort of create a path through it. And it is super cool, and I had a lot of fun with that one. It's just neat. It's got a couple of my favorite things that you can do in the game in it.
And to solve that one, you just have to set it to rock is you, and then flatten out the rock so there's two next to each other. And then push that into the water.
Change it to, yes.
Yeah.
It's super, super simple. But there's also an extra version of this that's a bit more involved.
Yeah, a little bit more challenging. I remember that one, yeah.
You have to like move the words for like flag is and the flag are on the opposite side of the water.
Yeah.
And win is on the side that you start on. That actually is my favorite version of it. Mm-hmm. It's super cool. Super, super cool.
Yeah, that one's a really great level. I love both of those. The one that I found the most challenging, or not the most challenging, but the one that I found myself to be the most excited about solving, feel the most smartest while solving, was there's a lava one. So it's a little later. It's in the 9th area of the game. And it's one where you have to, you unlock the fall adjective. I don't know what words we should use for these different kinds of things you can move around, but you find out that there's a fall rule. And you can use fall to basically turn the game into a platformer for whatever object is fall. So it has physics, it has gravity and all that. It doesn't have physics, sorry, but it just has gravity. So it falls down from wherever it is. And you kind of have to lead one of the other objects in the game called Kiki, one of the other characters. You have to lead it to this spot. You have to push the Baba is you rule out of somewhere and like have it land on something that is also moving at the same time, so it can push a skull out of the way that'll kill you, so you can't go do it on your own. And then after that, you have to make that same Kiki be you and like lead it over to a flag to win the game. It's insane.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love this game, dude. This is a really good game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, I think that it's going to go down as one of the best puzzle games, not of just this year, but of the last couple of years.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. I would not be surprised if it just wins more awards. It's not going to get as much recognition as something like Shovel Knight, because this is such a niche game and because of how difficult it is. But it's really, really fucking good.
Yeah. Like, and like you said with the simplicity of it, the simplicity of the game really drives home how good it is, because it doesn't muddy itself with anything fancy. There's no like ridiculous effects or anything. It's just is very straightforward, both visually, just visually, mechanically, and in the gameplay, and in the music and in everything. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It doesn't try to blow you away with anything. And you feel smart no matter what puzzle you end up solving. Everyone's going to have their own different answer, but I think that speaks to just the fact that like there's never a point where it tries to specifically make you feel smart. There's nothing like magical that makes you feel like a genius. The game doesn't like deliver you a moment. You create your own eureka moments, right? They're not delivered to you. You don't get flashy sparkles. You don't get like fun animations. You just, here you go. You are smart. Solve it. And you do it. You feel like a genius.
Baba is you and smart.
Oh yeah.
Now we're going to head on over and do a little bit of outro stuff, and we'll announce the game for next month.
Yeah. Let's do it up.
Yeah. Let's do it. Thanks for joining us for this month's episode of Byte Club.
Woo.
Next month's game is Bastion.
Oh yeah.
We're digging into the vaults a little bit to pick a game from ages past because we want to play it again.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Bastion, Jesse?
Absolutely, I'll do that for you. So Bastion is a third-person isometric action game and is the first title developed by the now renowned team at Supergiant Games, some of the best developers in the industry, IMO. In it, you play as the kid adventuring through the world of Caelondia in order to restore the last safe haven of the world after the calamity. All the while, your actions are narrated in real time by Rux, voiced by the ever-talented Logan Cunningham, who voices the Sword in Transistor, and I think somebody else in Pyre. I'm not entirely sure, but very, very great voice actor. Easily one of the best voices in games right now.
So good.
You can find Bastion on pretty much every platform. It's on Steam, GOG, the Humble Store, PlayStation Store, the Microsoft Store for Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch eShop for $15, or you can pick it up on the Apple App Store for $5 if you've got one of those Apple devices. So if you haven't played this indie gaming masterpiece one, you're a fake nerd, hand over your gamer license, but also pick it up, play it with us so you can join in on the conversation next month, and maybe we'll give you your gamer license back.
Maybe. You'll need to sign some forms in triplicate.
We'll think about it.
So as always, we will be taking your questions about next month's game and chatting about them here on the podcast, so be sure to send those in as you come up with them. We have 3 ways for you to send in questions. You can email Nevin at indie-bytes.com, you can use the contact form on the Indie Bytes website, or you can yell them at me on Twitter at IndieBytesYT. You can find Jesse on Twitter at Garatia. You can find a whole... Was that even close?
It's about as close as the last
one
time.
of these days.
You'll get it one day.
Man, I'm just gonna... Man, shit. You can find a whole bunch of indie game-related content on Twitter at IndieBytesYT, on YouTube as Indie Bytes, and at indie-bytes.com. This episode's music is from the Baba Is You soundtrack by Avery Tekari. Fun fact, that's his actual name, as you mentioned earlier. Thanks for adding that note there. It can be found on Steam, itch.io, and Bandcamp. Thanks for listening. We are looking forward to getting your questions, and we will see you next month.
Oh yeah, baby. We're gonna catch you playing some Bastion.
Can't wait to talk in a country accent.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Bastion.